This is Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. And my friends, this is not how we wanted the show to go tonight. And as we open things up, none of us were expecting to discuss anything other than a road win versus FC Cincinnati today. But as we don't have to tell you, things have changed quite dramatically here in the U.S. and all across the world. Before we get started, we need to address just how serious this pandemic actually is. Tonight on the show, our goal is to entertain and to bring the DC United family together to discuss the game and the team that we've all come to know and love. But we all recognize that coronavirus is impacting our supporters' lives and the lives of our friends and families across the globe. So as we come on the air tonight, there are people worldwide who are concerned about their livelihood as measures are being put in place to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. Friends of the show in Europe are on lockdown for the next several weeks, and the United States is beginning to implement similar measures. We want you to know that as members of the Tried and True family, and more broadly, the DC United family, we're all stronger together. So we encourage you to keep your loved ones, family, and friends close, and to continue to support your local small businesses, such as the bars and restaurants that are there for us after each and every game. I think we can all agree that when looking at the big picture, pausing all sports for the time being was the right decision, as much as it pains us all as fanatics. With our collective cooperation, we'll all be back supporting the clubs we love in the very near future. And with that, I'd like to welcome in our full cast tonight, who are here participating in a makeshift version of our original plans for the weekend, which involved a bourbon tour of Kentucky en route to the away match in Cincinnati, but we couldn't quite pull that off, so we did something similar here at our place tonight, and I'd like to welcome to the show Joshua Morgan, Sam Kastner, and Michael Black. Welcome in, guys.
Hey, thanks.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I wish I was in Cincinnati, but, you know, it is what it is.
It pains me to hear you say that.
Whoever said that before.
Yeah, I wish we had soccer to talk about. I wish we had, a U.S. league going. I guess this is how they felt back in 1996, 1998, where they were worried if the league would be around anymore. And we kind of get a glimpse of that here in 2020 with the league shut down. I mean, we're all pretty confident that they'll be back when the league goes, but man.
But on a much lighter note, I was iced in the setup of tonight's show, so you guys are going to have to talk while I chug this disgusting Grave Smirnoff Ice.
And if you don't know what Smirnoff icing is, if you find a Smirnoff Ice while preparing for the show or tailgating or even at the game, it's your responsibility to consume said Smirnoff Ice before proceeding on with any other tasks.
As quickly as possible, between your Heineken beers, of course.
Right. It's nowhere near as good as a crisp Heineken. But let's talk about what's gone on in the world this past week. So we went home from a Miami win. We all felt pretty good, felt pretty regular. And then throughout this week, it slowly developed into, more and more leagues postponing, the NCAA, and then the NHL, and then MLS follows suit. And so it quickly kind of came into no soccer in the world except for a few leagues.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. I think Wednesday night we all kind of saw the world change. Wednesday was when, the first of the sport started to, at least in the U.S., you know that European countries have kind of been dealing with, and Asian countries have been dealing with this for a lot longer than we have. But we kind of saw that shift, at least in the U.S., with things being canceled. And as John said, it's a bummer. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I've just been told to go remote at work, and, I'll be working. I work in events, and all those events have been canceled. So
yeah, there was a moment, and by the way, that was disgusting. There was a moment on Wednesday when it just kind of all came apart, and I think it became very real for us here. When March Madness at first was going to be, empty stadiums, and then all of a sudden it's canceled completely, and then all the other sports are starting to postpone and suspend, and it's like, if you didn't think this was real, it's real, guys.
Yeah, it's crazy. No one has ever really lived through something like this before. Not the last thing that a lot of people have been pointing to is the Spanish influenza, but the world was a completely different place at that point. I mean, you didn't have kind of the global society that you had. Sorry, John,
I muted my mic while I burped. I tried to spare y'all from it.
And for sure, you had the Spanish influenza. You had 9/11 shut down sports for a while, but at that point, MLS was playing a significantly shorter season. This is the first time we've seen a full several week long postponement of games. We're expecting at this point that games are going to get made up, but at this point, who really knows what's going to happen?
You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we're hoping it'll be the end of the month, but in reality, it could go a lot longer. So, I mean, I know everyone's kind of talking about the coronavirus right now. We definitely didn't want this whole podcast to be about the coronavirus. We just felt the need to say, as much as we're going to joke that we're upset that MLS is canceled and, we're going to be bored for the next X number of months, we did just want to address that it is really serious, and we want everybody to be taking it really seriously.
Yeah, and so I think, Sam, to that point, we should talk seriously about the impact to DC United right now because, as the world tries to figure out how to cope with this on a micro scale, DC United have to figure out exactly how they're going to proceed while there's no games and while there's, hopefully some practice. Major League Soccer has suspended all even practice activities through Monday, and, I was at the stadium on Friday, and the team has gone to great lengths to implement some coronavirus protocols. I mean, if you've been to the south end of the stadium, there's a couple ways to access the facilities there. And up until now, it was kind of like, yeah, just go to the one where someone's at. And at this point now, it is hard protocol that the players are going in one entrance, front office members are going in another one. They're doing their best to keep everyone separate. And that's just the beginning of it.
And I believe that teams can't be practicing together right now, right?
Not until Monday at the earliest.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the it's hard to bring a bright point out of this, but DC United kind of need a little bit of time to get together. Kamara and Mora went off in that Miami game with hamstring injuries. It's really dark times, but maybe we can take that positive out of it. The DC United might come out of this even better because they were a side that looked like they needed a little bit more time to maybe bring in a couple transfers. We've been Goff has reported that we're linked to a couple guys, and we need the time to practice because I feel like the team, Gressel is playing in the midfield right now, and he's not being maybe as productive as he could be, and Sorga still seems really raw. I feel like maybe DC United needs a couple weeks to practice before resuming play.
Our other big injury, obviously, is Paul Arriola, and with an ACL, you don't know how long that's going to take. But MLS this season was going to end a lot earlier than it has historically ended. But who knows? I mean, people are used to playing, the players in MLS are used to playing as late as early December, right? So potentially. Obviously, we don't know how long this is going to last, but potentially that's moving the season back to make up some of these games. So potentially the playoffs get pushed back. And, I mean, that just gives Paul a lot more time to heal. So, I mean, again, it's weird to take a bright side out of this,
right.
But it might be good.
And there are mechanisms within MLS to get roster relief, but the roster relief is like $200,000. It's minuscule compared to losing a DP.
And it requires you to put the injured player on the shelf for the year.
Right. So I don't know if we have a confirmed instance that DC United has put Paul Arriola on the shelf for the season. We had him on last show, and he said a range from he said it himself. He said it might be 4 to 5 months, or it could be up to 9 months or longer for players. It just depends on the player and how they're feeling. I mean, Paul seemed like he was in really good spirits about it, and his jacket was lined with motivational quotes about coming back and proving everyone wrong. But we don't know. So maybe they didn't take him off the shelf. Maybe he's ready to go in 4 months, and that 4 months is only really 3 months of play miss, and now we have a loaded side.
Well, and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and really at this point, who knows how far the season's going to get delayed. MLS has stated that they're expecting to make up games. They're going to tack it onto the back end. As Sam said, we've got the change in schedule for what's going to come, back into the season, but. That 3 games that we're expecting to get delayed towards the back end of the season, that's going to get made up, and who knows if there's going to be more tacked on. Like, we've got a lot of uncertainty as far as what the rest of the season goes, but, I think I speak for all of us when we say that we're hoping to come back to the game and, be back out at Audi Field and elsewhere supporting DC United, ready to go as soon as humanly possible.
So, and speaking of being together and supporting the game. While we're on hiatus, we look to you guys as our listeners and as our fans to join the conversation using the hashtag #TriedAndTrueDCU or by joining us on our. Unfortunately, it's not a functioning call line tonight, although we really hope to have that available. But despite our best efforts, we could not get the call line to work, but we're going to continue to work on that. But In the interim, you can always text the show, and that's at 202-892-6328. That's 202-892-6328. And in the very near future, we hope to have that as a call-in line. So on a somewhat positive note, as a result of this virus, the XFL season has been completely abandoned. So that means that
already feels ours again.
Yeah.
Our home is our home.
Beer snakes and all.
Yeah, running past it this morning, the goalposts are still up, but we do expect the field to be replaced there shortly, and then at least that will be behind us this year. But as we look at, kind of the schedule going forward, as you guys were mentioning, all these games in theory are going to be made up at the end of the year. It's going to extend the season, and it's going to be an interesting end of the season run.
Well,
I don't think anyone has any idea what's going on. U.S. Open Cup might not even happen. It's the longest running soccer competition because it didn't stop during World War I and World War II.
And it's my favorite. I love the Open Cup.
100 plus years. I mean,
right.
It's hard to imagine missing Open Cup.
And so it's going to come down to the league to decide what it prioritizes. I mean, we have the U.S. Open Cup, we got Leagues Cup, especially for DC United playing in that. We have the CONCACAF Championship, which has been postponed after Atlanta got destroyed by Club America. We have
really unfortunate for Atlanta that didn't happen today earlier.
Unfortunate for no one else.
So we have all this scheduling conflicts. I mean, they say they're going to make up the season, but, man, they're not going to have a lot of time to work.
I almost wonder if that's on the back burner for MLS, though, because it's not as though it's a like an even – we're not playing everyone in this season. It's the first season of MLS where each team is not playing every other team. So I almost wonder if they are just kind of going to take the L and say, like, you don't need to play the rest of the teams. Maybe they do kind of shuffle around who you play. But I don't know. I don't know what the – priority for the league is going to be, but because we already have that situation where DC United and all the other teams in MLS are not playing every other team, it's not as though we're the European League where it really matters and it's so much ingrained within their league to play every other team twice. The Open Cup and all these other tournaments might be the priority of being made up.
Yeah, and you talk about additional fixture congestion coming up. You've got DC United playing in the Leagues Cup. A new.
My vote would be to cancel that. Although I know that MLS and Liga MX are not going to do that.
It might be a bigger money grab than DC United versus the Riverhounds. DC United.
Yeah, but in our hearts, what's the real winner?
But when you talk about a new tournament last year, a tournament that's going to start earlier this year, really trying to tie MLS to Liga MX, trying to capitalize on the fact that a lot of Liga MX teams have a large draw in the United States. You've got a lot of fixture congestion coming down the pipes that who knows how that's going to factor in when they start rescheduling games. We start trying to figure out how they're going to move forward. It's a challenge. And, I don't envy the schedule makers at all from that.
Right, I know. So I think I don't know how much more it's going to do to speculate. I think maybe we can move forward to just what we know about DC United and kind of the rumors that have happened and maybe touch on those a little bit.
Yeah, so let's talk about those first 2 weeks. We come away with 3 points from Colorado and Miami. Maybe not exactly what we hoped for. I looked at the schedule personally, and I thought we could get 9 points through the first 3 games. We lose to the set pieces that Colorado Rapids have, and they executed as well, and they deserve the 3 points. I think they beat DC United.
They also took care of regional powerhouse Orlando City SC last weekend.
Colorado
regional powerhouse.
Yeah.
That's the greater Orlando region.
And I think we were lucky to get the 3 points for Miami, too. So, I mean, yeah, it's terrible, but I'm glad DC United are taking a break and trying to go into the practice fields.
And
right?
full credit to Orlando. They have won the most points of any team in Florida.
Miami's still waiting on that home opener. They've only been
waiting.
Miami, the most patient franchise in global history.
We're second to that one, right? We've waited a while for a trip.
So within this period where we're going to kind of be able to sit back and figure things out, I think that there is a major rumor that's coming out of U.S. men's soccer player potentially coming to
Is that
DC
U.S. men's
United.
national team great Bobby Wood?
Great. Yep, I think it might be.
I think great is a Wow. Let's just not.
That being said, though,
2007, great. I'll give you that one.
He had his moments.
Bobby Wood scored against the Netherlands to win the U.S. men's national team game in a friendly a couple years ago. Since then, he's sat on the bench mostly in Germany, which, yes, I'll give you that, is a way better league than MLS. He probably will, if this deal comes through somehow, and since he went after and they weren't able to get him because he's on like a $3 million contract. But if DC United is able to pull this off, I don't know if he replaces Kamara. I think he competes with Kamara. He's got talent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth having that competition. I don't know if it's worth $3 million, and that's the really big question, right? That's why Cincinnati couldn't get him, is it's hard. I don't know that Bobby Wood is worth
the contracts are just inflated over there, right? They care about soccer more. There's more money in soccer.
So that's the issue, right? Could he sit there and just collect the check and not be playing soccer, or does he come over here for a lot less money and play soccer? And I think that's what he and his agent, and there's a lot more that goes into it. But
so I think there's three things that could happen. DC United could just pony up and pay $3 million a year. I would be livid.
Not happening.
Or
$3 million is absurd.
We could get him on loan with like an option to buy on an obvious lesser contract, and Bobby Wood would have to acknowledge that. Or he could agree to mutually terminate his contract with his current club and then come over here and sign with DC United, who apparently have his rights. He's not in the allocation order somehow. Weird MLS rules, but
I think we have a discovery claim.
Yeah, it was weird stuff. But allocation order is supposed to be for U.S. men's national team players, which apparently Bobby Wood is not on, and he'd have to agree to a deal. I don't think he's the next DP.
Or he just doesn't come, and I kind of feel like that's the more likely option.
I'm fine with it. I think Ola Kamara is as talented as Bobby Wood.
I would like to see that competition, though. I mean, Ola Kamara came down with a hamstring, and who's our backup forward?
Sorga, who showed well. Sorga showed well. He didn't have, like I said,
guys,
he was raw.
The Estonian Messi. Can we call him by his proper name, please?
The Estonian Messi, he showed good stuff. His movement was good. His finishing and decision making was raw. He's a way better prospect than most that we have.
And really created some opportunities. There were several times where you're, sitting in the stadium, you're thinking, hey, Sorga's got a chance here. It didn't pan out, but those kind of opportunities are the ones that we haven't seen from DC United forwards in quite a while. And
can we talk about these set piece goals, man? I love goals. I'm getting tired of set piece goals.
That was a question last time, right? Are we worried that we're not getting a lot of goals out of run of play?
Just to be clear, we're allowed to have both set piece goals and run of play goals. Like, we don't have to kill off set piece goals, right? I want to check with you.
I'm not sure we're allowed to have both. I might have to consult with Ben Olsen about that, because it appears we're only allowed to have set goals.
Well, it does make you wonder, though. I mean, you guys have mostly talked about Bobby Wood, competing with Ola Kamara, but could we change the formation? Could we do two strikers up top?
Oh my God, yes! I have been arguing for two forwards up top since we literally went to one forward on top.
But
sorry.
Here's the thing:
I think our wingers are too good. Our
that.
wingers are too good to play two strikers up top.
Well, I don't necessarily.
We've got a lot of
disagree.
midfielders on the roster. You talk about Yamil Assad, you talk about Gressel, you talk about Flores. You've got a loaded cast when you talk about midfielders. But as far as actual goal scorers up top, trying to put it in the back of the net. You start to run a little bit short there.
I understand. We have a stacked midfield. I think it's hard because we've only seen the two games, right? We're still trying to figure it out. But I think when I think about holding number 9, like your traditional one forward, I think of like a Josie Altidore type player who is built and he can like muscle off defenders and he can hold up the ball for the rest of the team to build around him. And I don't know that that's Kamara, right? I don't know.
You think it's Bobby Wood?
No, absolutely not, which is why I am like nodding to John over here that I have been arguing forever that we don't need to be playing 1-4, we need to be playing 2, and I think that potentially if that means that you're bringing on a super sub in the midfield, then that's totally fine, but goodness, I'd love to see us play 2 forwards again.
So we're going to continue this debate because clearly we all have some thoughts on this, and I've got some very interesting Bobby Wood stats to share with the group, but what we're going to do is we're going to send it to our first break. I'm going to remind everyone listening to please join the conversation using the hashtag #TriedAndTrue. DCU, and we'll be right back here in just a few moments. Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.
Can't listen to us live on YouTube? Fine. Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, or Pocket Casts the morning after the match.
Tried and True, the DC United post-game podcast presented by Heineken, will be back in less than 90 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening live. If you want to join the conversation, let us know what you think in real time using the chat on YouTube Live, on Twitter using the hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU, or text us at 202-892-6328.
Tried and True, the DC United post-game podcast presented by Heineken, will be back in less than 60 seconds.
Let us know what you think between games on Twitter at hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU or email us at triedandtruedcu@gmail.com.
Tried and True, the DC United post-game podcast presented by Heineken, will be back in less than 30 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a follow on social media. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU. Again, that's Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU.
This is Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken, and we are talking about Bobby Wood, potential future DC United player, Bobby Wood, that is, and I guess former men's national team great. It's been a long time since Bobby Wood's been in the men's national team picture, but before we went to break, we were starting to debate the merits of bringing Bobby Wood in and where he'd fit on the roster, but it's interesting to take a look. It's a tale of two Bobby Woods. His men's national team stats: 13 goals in 45 caps for the men's national team. But right now playing for Hamburg, he's not playing a whole lot. I mean, the German league is well into the second half, and he's only played 152 minutes across 6 matches in the 2 Bundesliga. His last appearance was November 29th, and so there's a gap here, right? I mean, Bobby Wood kind of has dropped off, but has the talent gone away? Was it the injury?
But
what do we do?
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. Wasn't he a part of that kind of whole group of players who weren't playing a whole lot for their club teams, but were being called up for their national team? Like, even while he was being called up, I don't know if he was getting...
No, he was getting...
Was he?
He was,
okay.
like, breaking through in Germany when he was getting those call-ups. And he's kind of faded away from both. Look, this is Casper's bread and butter. He finds players who are neglected by his team, from Wayne to Pipa Higuain to I mean, almost every season, Casper finds one guy that is underrated by his team, and he signs him on a cheap deal. I mean, we have Pipa on $100,000. That's ridiculous. So maybe we bring in Bobby Wood on the cheap, and he's an option off the bench, or he comes in and he shows out and he's the starter.
I think if he comes on the cheap is the $1 million question, right? The $3 million question.
And let's be real, like, you're not going to sign a guy who is tearing it up for his club team. He's putting a lot of balls in the back of the net. You've got to find opportunities for.
You mean Pool 6 not coming to DC United?
What?
Not yet. Stand down.
Hey, I'm here for it, but I'll hold my breath and see what happens there. But at the end of the day, you got to find the guys who are available, and if this is a guy who's not getting playing time, John's talked about not playing significant minutes since November. Hey, maybe a change of scenery. Maybe coming into a side that's really only a piece or two away from creating a lot of good.
Do you think
chances.
that? Do you think we're a piece or two from being there?
Yes.
Hey, as fans, we got to say that, right?
Yes.
I want to, but I watched the first 2 games and I didn't see a lot of chances.
It's also the first 2 games. You don't need to be good till the middle of the season in MLS.
I think that's the garbage excuse that Ben Olsen's been pushing out. I love Ben Olsen. I have a number 14 jersey in my closet, but saying that, we're a team that's figuring out who we are, you're a professional soccer team.
I agree.
The season started 2 weeks ago. Come on.
I agree, and I don't disagree that Ben can kind of put out some garbage excuses sometimes, but I'm also going to say that if we're still talking about signing players who are able to bring something to this team, like, you don't need to start the season with your top-notch team. In
Yeah,
MLS.
and actually we've seen it gone very poorly when we started the season.
We
with our
almost
top-notch
lost to
team.
Miami last week, who started their franchise with a team who
That's
didn't know who
solid.
they
Did
were.
we blare out of the playoffs in the last 2 seasons? Absolutely. I'm not saying that we have done spectacular at the end of the MLS seasons. I'm just saying that I'm not freaking out and saying that our MLS Cup hopes and dreams are done this season because our first 2 games didn't go perhaps as well as we would have wanted them to.
And credit to the front office in the offseason, bringing in Edson Flores, bringing in Julian Gressel, signing Emil Assad toward the back of last year with the intent to bring him in this year. They've made what, from all intents and purposes, would be a major move on a lot of different fronts.
Yes.
But they've got to create.
And they've had 2 games to figure it out. Like I said in our very first after the home opener is, I didn't realize it until we were talking about it, but all of the big name players we're talking about in DC right now were not here last season.
Yeah.
So they need time to figure it out, and I'm totally okay with giving them a few games to be able to figure that out, especially when you have this conversation about us bringing other big name, potentially key parts of DC United into the fold.
Well, and by the end of, at this point, the midfield, Paul Arriola was the heart and soul of that by the end of last season, especially when Lucho found himself on the bench. And so all 3 midfielders are new. And then you look to the back line, and you've got Russell Canals playing out of position. Let's just own that. He's playing out of position. Joseph Mora goes down in the last game. O'Neal Fisher, who I was thrilled to see come back. The guy's coming off a traumatic injury. Like, the back line's not in the perfect spot right now. This team has a tremendous upside. And bringing it back to Bobby Wood, in the offseason, reports from MLSsoccer.com, which does stand for Major League Soccer.com, which is ridiculous, but we'll put that on the shelf. He turned down a €1 million offer to play for FC Cincinnati, and it sounds like that was the player turning down that offer. So for a second-tier Bundesliga team, it doesn't seem like it's a club issue in whether that's a loan or whether that's an outright transfer. But I'll ask you guys, from a salary perspective and knowing the position this club is in, how much money, what are you willing to pay Bobby Wood?
Less than Kamara, like half of what Kamara makes.
What is
I think
Kamara
he's
make?
worth half of what Kamara makes. Kamara is a proven goal scorer in this league. He will get double digits if you play him every week. Bobby Wood is an unknown. He hasn't scored in Bundesliga 2. I wouldn't want to pay him more than half of what Kamara
Double
makes.
digits in terms of goals, or
Kamara is gonna, if we continue to play Kamara, if he's healthy, he will get double-digit goals.
I think it's also it's not all about salary, right? Would you first of all rather live in Cincinnati, Ohio versus Washington D.C.? Probably Washington D.C., right? Second of all, if you're just looking again,
Definitely Washington, D.C.
Right, again, I just also admitted that DC United kind of flared out of the postseason for the past 2 seasons, at least. Just thinking about when we've been in Audi Field, but. Would you rather be on DC United or would you rather be playing for Cincy at this point of time?
So just put this in terms of dollars, right? Joshua, I hear what you're saying. We should be paying him less than Ola, and I don't necessarily disagree. But what we don't have really ever in Major League Soccer is a good handle on salary. But what we do know is that last year Ola Kamara had a base salary of $240,000, which almost certainly was prorated because of when we got him in the season. It was kind of a half-season deal. When he left the Galaxy, it was $925,000 guaranteed.
He's a 10 player.
So let's just say, for the purposes of the conversation, $1 million is what Ola's making. Let's just say that. Are you saying $500K?
Yeah.
For Bobby Wood? Because I don't think we get him for that.
I don't think you
absolutely not.
Would you fill your last DC spot as
DP
if you're
spot?
Dave Casper? Would you fill your last DP spot?
No. I don't think you need to use it. I don't think you should use a DP spot here. But I think you could buy Bobby Wood down with Tam.
I don't know. I think I disagree with that because we saw last season. This is a DC United team that allowed one of the fewest goals allowed against in the entire league. You talk about both ends of the ball. This is a team that needs to score goals. This is a team that found its way into the playoffs. Had to go away, but very well could have found itself hosting a playoff game last year after playing very solid defense. I think this is a team that has to find a way to score goals somehow, and you got to spend money on that point because Wayne Rooney's gone. Lucho Acosta is gone. you've got to replace that somehow, right?
I mean, that kind of makes me nervous, though. Like, you're talking about how we need to score goals. We also need to keep goals out of the back of the net. And I don't know that we've been doing that a whole lot.
We haven't through the season, 0 shutouts so far, but the center back depth we were all worried about seems to have a resolution. DC United apparently targeting 2 players. We have the French center back that we were targeting earlier in the season, who's in a relegation battle right now, and then we have a new name reported by Goff, Derek Williams from Blackburn Rovers. I'm really excited about this one.
I don't know. I mean, I'm always excited about bringing another player from the English league here because, then I can learn more about a new English team that I can certainly come to hate.
Well, and what does that say about where we're at right now? That we're excited and hanging on every single potential signing we have. That shows us that we're not a complete team yet, and we have very strong hopes.
I'll
of being
disagree with
there,
that one on this point. Who do you bench at center back? So I'm really excited for Derek Williams because I want this team to have that depth. But do you bench Brilliant?
No, I don't think you bench anybody. But right now, Donovan Pines isn't healthy. Granted, we don't know when we're going to be playing again, and so by then he should be. But in theory, right? If you're going to be a team that's going to go deep, not only in Major League Soccer, but it's going to go deep in the U.S. Open Cup, be prepared for a Leagues Cup and a future CONCACAF Champions League.
We're going to have
run.
a championship center back on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, you should have depth at every position.
I would also say that, like, as a DC United fan for many, many years, as we all have been, right, we haven't seen a team that's been making a whole lot of big-name signings because, rightfully so, we were looking towards building Audi Field and we were looking towards putting all our money to that. So I wouldn't say that we're an incomplete team because we're getting excited about every new signing. I just think as a fan base, we're so excited to be finally spending money on players.
I feel like this signing was looking at replacing Brilliant, who's 34, 35 years old now. But
Is that DC United MVP?
But our guy has been playing
goal scorer Frederick Brilliant
out of the building.
He scored 33% of our goals this year.
He's literally scored 30%, and he's been a rock in the back. Like he hasn't. He's in the, I guess, his prime at 34 or 35 years old. It's amazing to see.
As I just said for the forward position, like, I think that there's value in just having competition for the position. I can't tell you who's going to be in that starting position, and I absolutely agree that the better teams have very consistent lineups, but also the better teams have very competitive practices in which no starting spot is guaranteed. And I think when you look at the lineup week to week, you know that Steven and Frederick are starting the games. So I think it would be worth, again, just having that competition.
I mean, looking at Derek Williams right now, I mean, he's he doesn't appear to be making a whole lot. His current market value, according to Transfer Market, is about $825K.
You mean like the mystery box that is Transfer Market?
Yeah, true. But that's not. I mean, to your guys' point, that's not the kind of money you want to spend on someone who's going to ride the bench, right? But again, kind of how we felt last year. I mean, it's Frederic Brillant's job to lose. The guy is 35, and especially, we don't know what's going to happen with the rest of the season, but it could mean a number of midweek games. It could mean some serious fixture congestion.
You're right.
And with that, I think there's a very real chance that guys like Pines and potentially Derek Williams are getting some serious minutes for the Black and Red.
Potentially it's not the people or the teams with the best starting lineups, it's the teams with the most depth is what I just heard you say, because you need people. It doesn't matter if your starting lineup is stellar and making the most money, but if they're getting exhausted and you don't really have the strong players to bring up off the bench, then you're not going to make it this season.
Yeah, and talking about, in a league where you are not able to spend the kind of money you might want to on folks, top to bottom on the depth charts, it's a challenge, and DC United's got to find a way to rise to that challenge. But
that was me cracking another beer.
I think the first practice Ben Olsen has Derek Williams. If we sign him, he has to practice, full on volleys into the top net over Luis Robles. Like that's what he has to practice. That's the bar that Brilliant has set.
Well, and one of the things we should talk about when we talk about these transactions right now, whether it's Derek Williams or whether it's folks from the French league, in the world of coronavirus, we don't actually know what's going to happen with these European leagues. I mean, one of the big reasons why we couldn't go through with the signing from France was that the club is in a relegation battle. But maybe right now, we don't know, and it's really interesting. And I know all four of us have English teams that we support, not only on the side, but in some cases just as strongly as we support the Black and Red. what's going to happen here? Because, Major League Soccer is in a unique position where they've only played 2 games. They moved the season forward this year. And so if we go on a significant break, there's still an opportunity for all of these games to be played, and the season will only be impacted in lost time, but not necessarily lost games. But
Right.
when
You can't cancel MLS at this point. It's just started.
But when you look at all of the leagues in Europe, to include the Champions League and the Europa League, we're pretty far along. I mean, we're 3/4 of the way there in all of the domestic leagues, and when you look at the Champions League, we're in the
16
semifinals
in Europe,
almost,
and then semifinals.
and so these players who we thought we were going to have to potentially wait out. I mean, decisions could be made in the next couple of weeks that say those seasons are over, and now, now some of those challenges for MLS sides trying to sign these guys go away, and so I guess my question to you guys is kind of twofold. One, we can talk about. Do we think these players are going to be available in the short term because relegation battles go away? But I guess more pertinent, what should some of these European leagues do with the season right now in a bit of flux?
So to answer your first question, if I am in any point of leadership with any of these European teams, I'm saying that I'm holding on to every single player because you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. And if you especially look at a lot of European teams or a lot of European leagues do their pro rel. So if you're looking, I mean, you don't know what they're going to say. These European leagues can say, okay, we're stopping the table now, and wherever you are in the table now, that's just what we're playing. They could
I would
say,
take that, by the way.
Same. Listen, same.
As a Leicester City fan, I'm trying to go to the Champions League next year. We're in 3rd. We'll take it.
Don't
to the
even
bank.
at me. As a Leeds United fan, I'm ready to be in the Premier League again. But again, I literally just started rooting for them. But I'm
been a
all
fan
in.
for 10 minutes now.
I'm literally all in though. Don't at me. Anyway, so what I'm saying is, or they could also easily say like it's done because, for example, in the English league, right, you have 3 teams that drop and 3 teams that advance. So in the championship, it's numbers 3 through 6 go into a like almost playoff type situation to see who's getting promoted. So they could say, okay, table stops now, except that whenever we're able to start playing games again, you 4 teams are going for it. In which case, if I'm any type of person who has a say in who's getting traded in those teams, I'm saying, hell no, I'm not letting anybody leave because we need all our people, because we don't have time to be able to try to get out of that relegation spot or that promotion spot anymore. We're just going all in.
Yeah, and you talk about, the difference in calendars between MLS and European leagues and, anywhere else in the world. MLS plays a different calendar. Our schedule starts end of February and we run through October, November.
December maybe this season, who knows?
Yeah, I mean,
Do I hear January?
But right now the MLS transfer window closes May 5th. And, one of the big complications is, hey, if you're going to bring someone in from Europe or South America or, anywhere else in the world, you've got to bring somebody in with the expectation that that team is going to be able to fill that gap behind them. Who knows where that's going to end up this year because, if guys aren't playing, if guys are, looking to make moves, find a spot, well, there's a lot of uncertainty in how those moves are going to happen.
We also have all these travel bans now. Like, no one's allowed to sneeze in Italy, let alone do anything else.
Can you buy
else.
a player from Italy
Exactly.
right now?
Like, can you bring them over? Can anybody from Europe come into the U.S. right now if you're not a U.S. citizen? Like, that has major implications. And again, like we said at the top of the show, this is a very serious pandemic that's going on, and absolutely every precaution needs to be taken to make sure that this virus stops spreading as quickly as possible. But what are the implications that happens for this league? And does that mean that you expand the international transfer window? Like, who knows? These are unprecedented times.
It's going to be interesting not only from international transfers, but also, I mean, when you look at some of the teams in Europe, a lot of these guys are under contract through like 30 June. And we're talking about a potential season that spreads into July or August. I mean, I think it's a foregone conclusion that Euro 2020 is going to be postponed to 2021. But what happens to these guys whose contracts expire on 30 June? Yeah, no, I mean, I certainly really looking forward to Euro 2021. Hopefully now it'll make it a lot easier to travel there. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be very, very interesting. And I would expect under a lot of circumstances, rules should be changing a bit here to accommodate, well, everything.
Yeah, and speaking of change, we had almost overnight, the U.S. Soccer Federation president changed hands.
What a transition.
And I think man, I don't want to speak for everyone at the table and everyone in DC, but God, it needed to be done, right? The arguments that U.S. soccer presented against the women's national team,
Shocking.
Literally shocking. Like I haven't seen a more blatant and just disgusting argument. Like, I don't know.
And best of luck to Cindy Cohn, formerly Cindy Parlow. She's a winner at all levels. I believe she's won a World Cup. She's competed at the highest levels when it comes to women's professional soccer. She's a winner. She knows how to get the job done.
You think she's the one that keeps the job, or do you think we have a new president soon?
I think she's got the opportunity. I think there's a lot of pressure on that position, but she's the one in the seat right now. So let's give her the support she needs and see what she can do with it. And if she doesn't get the job done, then we'll move on to the next. But for right now, she's the one who's filling the seat.
Well, from what we've seen in the past, I mean, this is a group of individuals and a voting bloc that's been very reluctant to change, despite seemingly every fan saying, do everything the opposite of how you're doing it right now, right? I mean, we look back a couple of years ago after the men's national team crashed out of qualifying. Don't
remind me.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we have to remind everyone because not a whole lot's changed, and that's what frustrates so much of us. And I mean, that's on the men's side. The women are the greatest team in the world in many ways,
they
right?
casually won another World Cup.
Yeah, and somehow they're treated as second class.
Literally
compared to
said
this,
in an argument that they were a lesser profession. It's absurd.
which is unbelievable. This men's team can't seem to get out of their own way. But when you look at here's what I'll say. Carlos Cordeiro stepping down was the right move for many reasons, but that doesn't change the fact that this entire organization, and I refuse to use the word infected, but this entire organization is just there are issues from the top to the bottom, and I know Sam has some thoughts here based on the look she's given me. So I'll end my portion of this conversation by saying we need wholesale change. We've needed it for a long time. I was hopeful that we would get it with a new president, but unfortunately we got Carlos, who was the vice president of Sunil Gulati for so long. So I'm hopeful that the change we're seeing right now will just lead to more and more change to bring this federation to where it should be, and I will see the rest of my time to Sam Kastner.
Listen, I think it is really major, and my initial reaction was very happy that Carlos stepped down, right? Because that is saying that the board kind of heard the fans' reaction, the players'
I don't
reaction.
think they heard the fans at all. I think they heard Coca-Cola and Volkswagen.
For sure. They heard the sponsors.
You're right, which is kind of getting into my second part of that. He's not the only person who okayed that legal argument. Like, this is legal public record argument.
He said that he didn't get the chance to read it, and therefore that's why.
Okay, first of all,
which
that's
is bull, right?
bull.
I mean, he
That's not what-
definitely had the chance. He didn't take the chance.
If he
would be
didn't
how I
read it word
that.
for word, like, people said this is the argument we're going through with, and he or the people that he designated to make that decision for him said, as the U.S. Soccer Federation, we are 100% okay with our legal argument being that the women's soccer players' jobs are not as difficult as the men's jobs because they're not I don't remember exactly what the correct wording was. They just weren't as athletic.
They
weren't
skilled
as
and
exactly. They're not as skilled and talented as the men are, and legitimately, as a female soccer player who pays to play at this point, no one's paying me to play soccer. I pay to play in several different leagues, but as a female soccer player who has played for 20 years of her life, that hurts me. So I can't even imagine these people who are being paid by this organization. I mean, imagine your job looking at you and saying because of your gender, you're just not as talented as the person of the opposite gender standing next to you. And I think that while Carlos stepping down is a big deal, as John alluded to, this is a problem that is ingrained into U.S. soccer. And that's not a question in anybody's mind. And a lot of the players were coming out saying, I wanted to think more of my federation. And in the back of my mind, I always thought, are these people just sexist? And I kind of didn't want to think that. But as they've literally written on this public legal argument, yeah, they are. So it's just really hurtful. And I don't think as a female, I'm the only one who's hurt by this. I think everyone in the room with me is very hurt by what this argument said. And we all expect a lot more of our federation. And we just hope that more change happens.
I think we all want better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge. North America, Canada, United States, Mexico is looking to host the World Cup in 2026. It's a men's World Cup, but at the same time, you're looking to set the standard as far as what we're doing as far as international soccer, men's, women's, what have you. You've got to find a way to respect the fact that the United States women's team has been the most dominant team in the history of international women's soccer, and you've got to find a way to put them on level pegging, at least with the men's team.
Yeah, and it's not a legitimate argument to say that the rest of women's soccer across the world isn't as developed as men's soccer, because, I mean, that's just true. Like, the women's side, you can see that a lot of federations around the world do not give their women's soccer teams the money to develop and succeed, but you absolutely cannot argue that that takes away anything from the fact that the women have 4 stars on their chest, and you cannot say that they did not face difficult games in this past World Cup, and it was absolutely not a given that they won. Like, they took every single thing and they left it all on the field, and you can't say that because the men are facing quote-unquote harder competition, it's just because the men aren't as developed and they're not competing at the level that we would want them to see. But absolutely just flat out a sexist argument to say that because the women are succeeding, their competition is less so.
And I'll throw out a quick plug real quick. Obviously a lot of things have been suspended, and we'll see when this seasons rebound and the players get back out there. But I think every one of us is a big fan of Washington Spirit and hoping for good things coming from that squad as well. Soccer is a wonderful sport, no matter who's playing it, whether it's men, women, doesn't matter. All 4 of us are happy to go out there and support whoever is making it happen, and we're hoping to get both genders out there very soon.
I agree, and it's so promising too, because, I mean, again, who knows with like all these leagues being suspended and everything like that, but the Washington Spirit, we're supposed to have 4 correct games at Audi Field, and that's so exciting for the entire fan base, because people packed Audi Field for the 2-3 games that happened last season. So it was so exciting that the Spirit were finally going to play in a very accessible stadium for everyone within DC. So especially coming off the back of that high, like, it just hurt to hear this coming from the U.S. Soccer Federation, and I hope that things change very quickly.
Yeah, it's super exciting, the future of women's soccer, and I think, having the U.S. Soccer Federation get out of their own way on this one will be good, and hopefully that's, what's coming as part of this leadership change, because, on the global stage, women's soccer has so much potential to continue to grow, and it's so exciting, and it's so inspiring, really, to see so many young people just get behind it, and we're going to get there. I really believe in my heart of hearts that we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would rather be here talking about the fact that the United States women just won over Japan in the She Believes Cups. A team that has, I can't remember the last time they lost. Let's be real. Like, they won the World Cup last summer, and they just keep winning.
Not even lost, just gone a game without scoring. Like the semifinals, right? Juliet scored in the 89th minute, and everyone was like, oh, wow, this will be... What was the stat? It was a ridiculous number of games that they would have gone without scoring in.
Definitely more than DC United.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. We've gone like very off tangent, but I mean, I'm just going to say that like U.S. soccer, I think, especially now that we have players like Paul Arriola who are consistently on like the men's national team, and we have the opportunity for the women's national team to come back to start playing in DC. I think that regardless of what happens in court, like the court of public opinion is going to come down on the U.S. Soccer Federation. And, you see a bunch of people across Twitter who now have this little profile picture of when the U.S. women's national team players came out and their jerseys were inside out. So the U.S. crest wasn't showing, but their 4 stars were. And a bunch of people have that on their Twitter profile right now. So I just think the court of public opinion, regardless of if this like horribly sexist argument were to like somehow go through the court systems, which the world's crazy right now, so kind of part of me would be like, yeah, okay. But I think, I mean, when I looked at that, I was like, I don't want to go to another game. Like, I don't want to give these people any more of my money or any more of my support, and I do not think I was the only one, and I would love to see change happen, and I think that kind of the public tide of opinion is going that way.
Yeah, I would agree, and Sam, on that super positive note, I'm gonna send it to break here. When we come back, we're gonna talk about a potentially new 50-team combined league between Liga MX and MLS. We'll also get to the hashtag Tried and True DCU. You're joining the show live by tweeting at us or calling in at 202-892-6328. And by calling in, I mean texting, because as my staff's reminding me here, the line's still down. So please text us 202-892-6328 or engage using the hashtag Tried and True DCU. We'll be right back here in just a couple of minutes on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.
Can't listen to us live on YouTube? Find Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, or Pocket Casts the morning after the match.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 90 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening live. If you want to join the conversation, let us know what you think in real time using the chat on YouTube Live, on Twitter using the hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU, or text us at 202-892-6328.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 60 seconds.
Let us know what you think between games on Twitter at hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU or email us at triedandtruedcu@gmail.com.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 30 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a follow on social media. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU. Again, that's Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU.
This is Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast and coronavirus hiatus podcast, unfortunately. We're going to talk a little bit about a rumor that has started about potentially a Super League. And guys, we've heard this before to several extents, but this is probably one of the more fruitful, if you will, rumors I've heard about Liga MX and MLS combining into what is potentially a 50-team Super League.
That's too much.
No.
I mean, that was my initial reaction, right? But we got to break this down because from a financial perspective, we know
Club America gets more views in the U.S. than any U.S. team. They have the better TV audience than we do. Every U.S. men's national team is overshadowed by a Mexico national team.
I don't think combining leagues is the way to fix that, though. Like, as somebody who's very into every single team in MLS, and I will make my best effort to watch every single game, this is like too much. I don't like it.
I'm not for it. I think I understand where they're coming from.
No.
From a financial side, I think it ruins the sanctity of the game. I don't want to see a Super League in Europe, and I don't want to see a Super League in the U.S. But if you can get the Club America fans excited about LAFC, then you get them watching LAFC versus RSL, and now you have literally like 10 times the viewers.
I don't think that happens though. If you're playing 49 games.
No. They're going to break it down into divisions.
Listen, I just
It's
ignored
gotta be
that
home
part.
and away,
I
so
literally
98
ignored
games, right?
that part. No, because that is the dumbest league I've ever heard of. So I really don't like it.
DC United will be in the 5th division of the
yeah.
North American League.
And we've already got
Standby.
We've already got concerns. MLS is expanding rapidly, and I think we're all for that.
Yes.
But-
No, kind of. It's expanding too rapidly.
Sam, you have to hold on. You have to take a side on that.
I thought he was going
I
somewhere
know-
else with that. I thought he was going somewhere else.
Well, it's a challenge, right? MLS has traditionally been a league where you get to play everyone, and you get to play a lot of teams twice, and that's not necessarily what you're going to get moving forward.
I already hate this season because we're not playing everybody. The MLS Cup or the MLS Supporter Shield means less because you're not playing everybody. Because if you're not playing New York
It literally
City,
means nothing.
It means
or you're
nothing
not playing
at
LAFC,
New York
or
Red
you're
Bulls.
not playing.
It means nothing, Red Bulls.
I am all for.
It never meant
adding
anything for you, Red Bulls. But it already means nothing to me. So if you're deciding that you're gonna have these this bracket style league with 50 teams, that's not expanding your base, that's shrinking it. You're not going to get casual fans to watch games when they don't understand the basic function of how the league plays.
I think the idea here is that you don't need casual fans.
I
you
don't
just
like
need
that.
League MX fans.
That's not how soccer becomes
I-
the next biggest sport.
But I
in the
do
US.
doesn't need
think
to.
I
Absolutely
do think that is Major League Soccer's idea, and that's what's
Right.
important here. Is
No,
because
no, I'm completely against it. I'm just saying this is their argument.
Oh, I understand where they're coming from as far as talking about TV ratings. MLS, we saw last weekend. The last couple the game with Copa America playing. They got better ratings than most MLS soccer games that you see. It's a challenge, but I don't think that the way to combat that challenge is by merging. It's by subverting your product to Liga MX. That's just not what I want to see.
It's too much. It's too much. You can't expect people to understand what 49 other teams mean and whatever. We're not playing every other 49th team, but even the casual fan knows that LAFC is a big deal, or that we don't like the Red Bulls, or that Jordan Morris or Bruce Arena.
No.
They know that they're
don't like
big
Red
deals.
Bulls.
Listen, I understand that.
really.
But I'm saying that part of it is that these other players in these other teams, and you can, even if you're not consistently watching these other teams, who the big names of those teams are. I see you putting your finger up at me, but I'm just saying that if there are
means
40...
that Luciano Acosta plays against DC United.
Okay,
Oh
Josh was
my.
off the pod. No.
Well, so in my opinion, right, I think we need to continue to grow our league's involvement and our league's partnership with the Mexican League, but I think you can do that independent of merging the leagues, right? I mean, I have forever wanted CONCACHAMPS to mean more here, and I think that happens the
Then
first
an
time
MLS
an
team needs
MLS
to win
team
it.
wins. Oh, absolutely. But the Leagues Cup right now is a bit of a joke, and I've said that on this podcast before, that that is the first thing I would cut when it comes to fixture congestion. But as we move towards what everyone wants to see is more teams in the U.S. with big followings, potentially pro rel, potentially Leagues Cup becoming more like a Europa League. To me, that's a better path than just combining everyone into this conglomerate league.
You're right, because I think that if you're combining everyone in that conglomerate league, and this is what I've kind of heard of everyone saying so far, is you're doing it to make more money. And I think that soccer across the world, while yes, it's very much about making money, and there are very obvious moves to make money, it's also just about the love of the sport, and it's about the love of watching your team and hoping they win and stuff like that. But combining into this huge conglomerate in which you're just kind of trying to ride off the backs of those really, really, really big teams who are going to get you those viewerships and those dollars, that just feels really gross to me.
And you can get there with CCL. We look at European Champions Cup action. People around the world watch those games. You can get there with CONCACAF Champions League. You just have to put it as a priority, not as an afterthought when you're talking about negotiating TV deals. You've got to find a way to make it a priority and make it something that's interesting, because those are good games. You've got the best in North America going at it. Talking about the best teams in MLS battling the best teams in Liga MX and beyond. There's a challenge there, but those are games that are worth watching, and you've got to find a way to level the playing field there.
Well, and we've talked a lot, this show about how DC United can continue to improve depth and continue to prepare for these other competitions. But let's take, before we wrap things up, let's take a brief look around the league right now, because there are some other teams that are in that boat. We thought Atlanta United was going to have a really good shot this year, and of course they were devastated by the ACL injury that seems to be killing a lot of teams this year to Joseph Martinez.
We'll see who they bring in, and that will determine their league. I think they're still a playoff team without him, but I think depending on who they bring in, if they're able to bring someone in.
And I'd love to see DC United as a team that could withstand a huge loss like that. Right now DC United can't afford losing an MVP caliber player and still be a threat.
Are we
in
doing
playoffs.
that with Paul though? Is
Yeah,
Paul-
I think we'll see if we can do that or
Yeah.
not, right?
Well, let's hope so.
But our team rides or dies less on Paul Arriola than Atlanta United rides or dies on Joseph Martinez, which we'll see. Listen,
Also,
it's correct.
Philly are legit again. Last
Shocker.
year they.
I
last
hate
year-
it.
Last
I
year,
But
can't
you're
think
not
about
wrong.
it. Yeah, I can't. That doesn't wrap in
last
my
year
mind.
they showed up, and then they showed up in L.A. Last weekend, and that was a barn burner.
That was
if you didn't,
such a fun
I
game.
went to bed and then I was watching it on my phone in bed, and then I got out of bed to watch more of that game on the bigger screen because it was amazing.
And let's talk about standings right now. Like a team like NYCFC, which was the number 1 seed going to the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken, last year.
Yeah.
They're currently in last place behind the
East.
2 expansion teams.
You literally love to see it.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm never going to, feel bad about a team that plays in a baseball stadium failing to.
Wait, time out. They play in how many baseball stadiums?
They play in
Oh,
Plus,
baseball
plus their rival stadium.
two baseball stadiums and one of jerseys, and Jersey aren't doing so hot themselves, right?
Stop it. Just
Suck
stop talking. Suck it, Jersey.
And Chicago went for this big rebrand. Have they played a game in Soldier Field yet, or are they waiting on that and then the virus?
I believe they're playing Atlanta this weekend.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
And so that rebrand hasn't gone as well. Columbus, definitely worth talking about. I think I'd put them up there with Philly. Like, they're legit too. Their new number 10 is fantastic.
I will just repeat in defense of DC United that, as I said, it doesn't super matter who's coming out on top at the very beginning. It says potentially a lot about what that team's going to do throughout the season, yes, but I think 2 games in, you can't say that Columbus and that Chicago and whoever are going to come up on top of DC United, because the first 2 games don't mean that much.
You go into last year and you look at the early
Atlanta's
season
never
matchup.
won a first game of the season until this year, and then they've done amazing, right?
Amazing. They've played one other game.
Well, and you look at a matchup like last year, like DC playing LAFC. That was supposed to be a matchup of titans as far as points accrued to that point. Didn't really pan out that way. Obviously you want to get points wherever you can get them, especially when you're talking about DC having the first 2 games at home. Let's hope that moving forward, that home record pans out and you continue to get 3+ games out of every 2 games you play at home. But who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, let's just stop the conjecture there. We'll see what this team looks like outside, like when they come back from this break. I hope they're amazing. I hope they tear up this league. I hope they win it all. I feel like we've speculated a lot in this episode because, I mean, what else is there to do right now?
Well, but the good news there is that we're going to be around for the duration of this coronavirus hiatus. We've got a lot of exciting things that we're going to begin to debut on the show, and one of those things, unfortunately, we did not have ready for tonight, but we're hoping to get there, which is the phone line to dial in. We'd love for you to join the conversation, not only virtually, but by calling in as well. So we're working to have that ready for next week's show, and we do plan to continue to go live after the games as they were scheduled. So we plan to talk at you either next Saturday or Sunday, which would have been post the Philadelphia game. But we'll keep comms open as to when we're going to have the next live show. And some feedback we've gotten, which we're working to implement, is to bring the show to you live on Twitter. So we've done YouTube, and of course we'll continue to release the show as a podcast, but we know that it's a lot more accessible for a lot of our listeners directly on Twitter. So that's something that we're looking to implement very soon. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback, because when the season comes back, we're going to continue with our roots, which is a post-game show. And one of the big things we'd love to do is actually be able to bring you live highlights, whether that's audio or video, from the game that we just all watched together. And so we're working very closely with Major League Soccer to make that happen, and we hope to have resolution on that by the time our team is back on the pitch. And so that's what's coming soon for us. But in the meantime, we want to hear your thoughts. So if there's topics you want us to discuss, players you want us to bring in as we at least can talk about it, right? Please let us know. As always, we're monitoring the Twitter feed throughout the week using the hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU.
And our email, you can email us at triedandtruedcu@gmail.com. I'd encourage anybody, especially for those broader topics that you'd want us to explore as a team, or anything else kind of larger, if it's not going to fit in a tweet, or if it's just kind of at more of a macro level. I'd encourage you to send us that email, and we can chat about it on the next show, because clearly we're not going to be able to chat about the DC United victory at Philly.
Oh yeah, and we've got we've got thoughts ready to go. Obviously, a lot of us have very strong opinions on where DC should go, signings you should make, opportunities that this team has to get better. But at the end of the day, we've got to hear from y'all, and we've got to hear your input, and that's what's going to help us move forward and understand the thought from the broader fan base. So let's see what we can get from y'all.
But in the meantime, we're going to call it a show for this week. Somehow Joshua and Sam beat everyone in the cornhole tournament earlier tonight. So we're gonna clean things up here and fix that in the second show of the night. But thank you all for hanging out with us for a little bit. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, stay safe. We're all one family, one black and red family here together, and we're gonna get through this, come out on the other side. And it won't be long now until we're back at Audi Field and on the road cheering on the boys in black and red. So for now, Vamos United, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Wash your hands.